My wife called me, "I'm divorcing you, and I've sold the house," she lied. But then, imagine this: your partner calls you, coldly announces they're leaving you, and then adds, "I've already sold the house." What would you do? Stick around to find out how one man turned the tables on betrayal and manipulation in ways you won't believe. Keep watching to discover how he fought back and took control of his life. This shocking twist will leave you on the edge of your seat, trust me. You don't want to miss this. It was supposed to be just another regular day. A day that seemed as mundane as any other. But little did I know, it would spiral into a nightmare that would change everything. I had just wrapped up a client meeting in Dallas, Texas, and everything had gone smoothly. The conference room was quiet, and the fluorescent lights overhead buzzed softly. I sat there for a moment, going over some final paperwork, my mind still on the meeting. I thought about heading back to the hotel, maybe grabbing a drink at the bar, just to unwind from the tension of the day. Then, my phone rang. The screen lit up, flashing Emily's name. It was an odd time for her to call. I had only just left the meeting. But I figured maybe she just wanted to check in, maybe to remind me to pick up something from the store, or ask when I'd be home. I stepped out into the hallway, moving away from the hum of the conference room, not thinking anything of it. "Hey, babe, what's up?" I said, trying to sound casual, a smile tugging at my lips as I spoke. But then her voice hit me, cold and sharp, devoid of any warmth or affection. It was like a slap to the face, but worse. There was no greeting, no pleasantries, nothing. Just her words, rushing out like a stream of venom. "Lucas, I'm divorcing you. And I've already sold the house. Noah and I are moving in together. Good luck finding a new place." I froze, my heart stopped. The words kept echoing in my mind, over and over again. Sold the house. It was as if the ground beneath me had vanished, and I was falling into an abyss. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to say something, anything, to argue, to fight, to understand what the hell was happening. But the words wouldn't come. And then, just like that, she laughed. A cruel, mocking laugh. As if this was some sick joke. It was so surreal, like I wasn't even a part of the conversation. I stared at the phone in my hand, the silence on the other end ringing in my ears. Noah. The name hit me like a punch in the gut. Noah was the man she'd been seeing behind my back, the one she'd been hiding from me for months, maybe longer. My mind raced, every little moment, every little glance I thought I had misread, every late night she'd come home smelling like someone else, suddenly made sense. But it didn't matter now, did it? This was the final blow. The ultimate betrayal. She'd sold our house, the house we built together, the one we dreamed about, the one we put so much of ourselves into. And now she was gone. With him. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my pulse, trying to calm the storm of emotions tearing through me. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Not now, not when she thought she had already won. I forced my voice to stay neutral, even though inside, everything was unraveling. "Sounds good," I replied flatly, my words almost too calm. As if she had just told me that she'd changed the brand of coffee we buy. No anger, no pleading, no weakness. Her silence on the other end lingered, and for a split second, I could almost feel her confusion. She probably expected me to beg, to yell, to try to fix everything. She didn't get that from me. Instead, I gave her nothing. Just cold indifference. I could almost hear her seethe, but I didn't care. Inside, though, it was a different story. A storm of emotions, anger, hurt, disbelief washed over me, each one more intense than the last. How could she do this? 6 years of marriage, and this was how it ended? A phone call, a few cold words, and she was gone. I looked around the hallway, my eyes landing on the door back into the conference room. But nothing mattered now. I wasn't thinking about the client or the paperwork anymore. I wasn't thinking about anything except what she had just told me. She sold the house. I took another deep breath, gripping the phone harder, trying to quell the tremor that was threatening to take over. I knew she wasn't done. She had more to say. Of course she did. Emily always had to make sure she was in control. Always had to remind me how much better her life was without me in it. She kept talking, her voice dripping with condescension. "You probably think you're going to fight this, don't you?" she said, almost amused. "But it's already done. The papers are signed. Noah and I are moving on. Maybe you should, too. Her words felt like a punch to the stomach. She was right. I thought I would fight it. I thought I would be able to stand up to this. But what could I do? What was left for me to fight for? She'd already won everything. Or so she thought. But that was when something clicked inside me. As she continued rambling, I realized one thing: she had no idea what I had done. No idea what I had set in motion months ago. She had made a fatal mistake. A mistake I wasn't about to let her get away with. I got it, I said flatly, my voice steady now. My mind already racing with the plan that was taking shape. I hung up before she could say anything else. Standing there in the hallway, I felt the weight of the situation settle over me. The rage, the hurt, it all simmered beneath the surface. But there was something else rising up in me too. A sense of resolve. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. As I walked back into the conference room, my eyes glazed over the paperwork in front of me. But my thoughts weren't on the client anymore. They were at home. They were with Emily and Noah, in our house. I knew exactly what she thought she was doing, starting a new life, walking away with everything she wanted. But she didn't know what I knew. Months ago, when we refinanced the house, I made a quiet move. I hadn't even thought twice about it at the time. It was just the smart thing to do. I transferred the deed into my name. And Emily? She didn't even bat an eye. She signed the papers without reading a single word. She trusted me to handle it all, just like she always did. But she never bothered to check the fine print. That was her first mistake. I smiled slightly, despite the turmoil inside me. She thought she had it all figured out. She thought she could tear apart everything we had and walk away with a prize. But she didn't know who she was dealing with. Not anymore. Not this time. I finished the meeting, but my mind was 1,000 miles away. I wasn't the same man who had answered that phone call just an hour ago. I was ready now. Ready to show Emily and Noah exactly what happens when you underestimate someone who's been paying attention all along. The minutes after that phone call felt like an eternity. My mind raced, thoughts colliding with one another, each one a whirlwind of disbelief, anger, and confusion. I didn't know how to process what had just happened. How could Emily do this? 6 years together, and this was how it ended over the phone, with a few cold words, a laugh at the end, and no more explanation than that. I stood there in the hallway of the conference room, trying to collect myself, trying to steady my breathing, but I couldn't. My hands shook, my chest tightened, and I felt like I was drowning in this rush of emotions. I wanted to scream, to throw my phone across the hallway, to pound my fist against the wall and demand answers. But I didn't. I forced myself to stay calm, to control the chaos inside me, because, as much as it hurt, as much as the sting of her words burned through my chest, I knew something she didn't. I had a card to play, a card that would change everything. I forced myself to walk back into the conference room. I sat down at the table, the paperwork in front of me, but I wasn't seeing it. My mind wasn't on the client or the meeting anymore. Hell, I didn't even care about finishing the paperwork. My thoughts were back at home, with Emily and Noah, in that house we had built together. She thought she had won, thought she could waltz into the life she wanted, leaving me behind like an afterthought. But she had no idea what I had done. I could almost feel a smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. Despite the storm inside, she didn't know what was coming. I wasn't angry in that moment. I was more focused than ever. Her betrayal? It stung. But it didn't break me. Not yet. It was like she had thrown a punch, thinking it would knock me down, but I was already standing, and now it was my turn to strike back. She had no idea what she was up against. I was going to make sure she learned exactly who she was messing with. The meeting dragged on, the hours slipping by with excruciating slowness. My mind was elsewhere, constantly spinning with what Emily had said. She had sold the house. The house. That was the one thing she couldn't take from me. I knew that now. It was my lifeline, my advantage, the one thing I could use to flip this situation on its head. I had to act fast, before she could get comfortable in her new life, before she and Noah could set up their little world without consequences. The flight home felt like the longest part of the entire day. I barely registered the flight attendant's announcements, barely noticed the other passengers around me. My thoughts were consumed with what I would do next. I kept playing back that moment when I realized what she'd done selling the house, moving in with Noah, and I couldn't stop the anger that bubbled up. How could she betray me like this? The woman I had loved, the woman I had given everything to. It didn't make sense, but it didn't matter anymore. Because I had already taken steps, and those steps were about to pay off. She thought she could walk away from me, from everything we had built, without a care. She thought she had outsmarted me. But I knew something she didn't. I knew the paperwork. I knew what she had signed. And that was her mistake. I had thought ahead, made sure I had the upper hand if things ever went south. She had trusted me with the details, trusted me to handle the business side of things. But she didn't read the fine print. She didn't realize that when we refinanced the house months ago, I had transferred the deed into my name alone. She didn't notice it. She signed the papers without so much as glancing at them. She didn't even care enough to ask the right questions. And that was her fatal flaw. I wasn't just sitting back, feeling sorry for myself. I was preparing. I was plotting. And soon, Emily would find out that she had made a grave mistake. She would learn the hard way that I wasn't the man she thought I was. I wasn't going to lay down and let her walk away with everything. I was going to fight. But I wasn't going to do it blindly. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of watching me crumble. When I finally landed and turned my phone back on, the first thing I noticed was the lack of messages from Emily. No smug taunts, no follow-up messages to rub it in. It was almost as if she assumed I was too busy wallowing in self-pity to even respond. But she was wrong. I was done feeling sorry for myself. I was done being the victim. Now it was time for me to take action. My first call wasn't to Emily, it was to Chloe, my lawyer. Chloe had been a friend for years, and I knew I could trust her. I explained everything to her: Emily's call, the house, Noah, the whole situation, and when I finished, there was a long pause on the other end. Then, Chloe let out a laugh. A sharp, almost incredulous laugh. She sold the house. She repeated, disbelief in her voice. Does she even know she can't legally do that? I couldn't help but smile. Apparently not, I said. But she will soon enough. Chloe went quiet for a moment, processing everything I had just told her. When she spoke again, her tone was serious. All right, here's what we need to do. First, we notify the buyer that the sale is void. If she's already taken the money, that could open up a whole mess of fraud charges. And if she's already spent any of it, well, that's even worse. Fraud. The word felt almost delicious rolling off my tongue. It wasn't the revenge I had imagined, but it was sweet. Emily thought she could get away with everything. But she hadn't accounted for the one thing I had been planning all along: proof. Proof that she had tried to pull a fast one. What do you need from me? I asked, my voice steady, calm, despite the rush of adrenaline surging through me. For now, gather everything. Emails, documents, anything related to the refinancing and the deed, Chloe said. I'll handle the legal side, but Lucas, if she's already bragging about this to you, she's probably told other people too. She's digging her own grave, and we just need to give her a push. I hung up the phone, feeling a strange sense of relief. The wheels were in motion now. Emily's arrogant, careless move had already set things in motion. Now it was time to make sure she couldn't back out. When I got home that evening, I didn't waste any time. I went straight to the desk, pulling out every piece of paperwork I had related to the house. The deed, the refinancing documents, the emails, everything. Each piece of evidence felt like a victory, like I was one step closer to winning this fight. I laid everything out on the table, the documents stacked neatly, all the little details in place. I was ready. As I stared at the stack of papers, I realized something. This wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about reclaiming my life. It was about proving to myself, and to Emily, that I wasn't the weak, naive man she thought I was. No, I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I leaned back in my chair and let out a long breath. It was going to be a fight. But I was ready. Wait until you see the bombshell that drops next. He's ready to fight back. But will it be enough? What's his next move, and how far will he go? Is Emily going to regret her actions? Comment 111 if you think he's got this. Comment woo22fa if you think Emily still has some tricks up her sleeve. Let's see who's right. You have 10 seconds to comment. Start nows. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you for taking the time to comment. Now, let's dive back into this thrilling story. The days that followed felt like they were stretching on endlessly. I couldn't shake the feeling of the ground beneath me still shifting, as if everything had changed and I had yet to catch up. The fury that had taken over me when I first found out what Emily had done still simmered just beneath the surface. But now it was mixed with something else, something colder. A quiet, burning determination. The anger was there, sure, but it wasn't the same. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was calculating. I had a plan now. A way to turn the tables. Every morning, I woke up with the same thoughts swirling in my mind. Emily, Noah, the house, and I knew I wasn't going to let her get away with it. But there was no room for impulsiveness. There was no room for emotional decisions or rash actions. I had to be smart. I had to outthink her, outmaneuver her, and show her that I wasn't the man she thought I was. She had underestimated me, but I wouldn't make that same mistake. The first thing I did was contact Chloe again. I had to make sure everything was set in motion, that the legal side was covered. She told me to gather all the documents related to the house, the refinancing, the deed, anything that could serve as proof of what I had done. I knew exactly where everything was, every email, every piece of paperwork. As soon as I hung up the phone with Chloe, I went straight to my home office, pulled out the folder, and spread everything out in front of me. The deed, the contract, the refinancing documents. Every last detail was there, in black and white. The evidence was undeniable. Emily had made one fatal mistake: she hadn't read the fine print. She hadn't seen what I had done behind the scenes, months before this all started to unravel. I sat there for a long time, staring at the papers. I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction. I had taken control, even when I didn't realize I was doing it. The house wasn't just a building. It was everything we had worked for, everything we had built together. But now, it was mine, and I wasn't about to let her walk away with it. I could already see the picture in my mind, her face when she found out what I knew. The shock, the disbelief. I almost felt sorry for her, but I didn't have time for that. She made her choice, and now I had to make sure she faced the consequences. The next few days were a blur of phone calls and meetings. Chloe worked her legal magic, making sure that every step I took was calculated, making sure I was covered every way possible. The buyer, who had purchased the house from Emily, was notified that the sale was void. It didn't take long for that to create a ripple effect. If Emily had already taken the money, that would open up a whole new set of problems for her. Chloe and I both knew what that meant: fraud. And once that word was on the table, everything would start to crumble for Emily. I still hadn't heard from her, and that only made me more certain that I was in control. She probably thought I was too wrapped up in my own misery to take any action. She had no idea that I had already set everything in motion. But I wasn't going to let her off easy. She had gone too far, and I was about to show her just how wrong she was. The tension in my chest built each day, the weight of what was coming pressing down on me. But there was no turning back now. It was time to act. I wasn't just playing defense anymore, I was on the offense. And that felt damn good. It felt like the first time in a long time that I wasn't just reacting to everything she had done to me, but that I was in control of my own fate. I thought about the moment I would see her again. What would she say when she realized the house was still mine? How would she react when she found out what I had done? The idea of confronting her was both terrifying and exhilarating. The thought of her face, that look of surprise and panic, almost made me smile. But I had to keep focused. This wasn't about making her feel bad, or getting revenge. It was about making sure she didn't get away with what she had done. It was about taking back what was rightfully mine. The phone rang a few days later. It was Chloe. I didn't hesitate to pick up. "Lucas," she said, her voice steady, "we've got everything in place. The buyer is on board, and we've got the legal grounds to nullify the sale. It's done. But there's one more thing we need to do before Emily catches wind of this." I felt a surge of adrenaline. "What's that?" "We need to make sure the message gets through loud and clear," Chloe said. "We'll need to confront her. Let her know that you're not just going to sit back and let her take what's yours. It's time." My heart raced. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment I would finally get to see Emily's arrogance shattered. To watch her face as she realized just how wrong she had been. But it wasn't going to be easy. I knew that. I knew she wouldn't just roll over and accept defeat. She'd fight. But so would I. This wasn't going to be some emotional confrontation. I wasn't going to let my anger control me. I was going to be calm, calculated. I was going to make sure she understood exactly why she had messed with the wrong person. I set the phone down after I hung up with Chloe, taking a deep breath. The time had come. And in that moment, everything felt different. The air felt charged with energy, with possibility. I wasn't the same man who had answered that phone call months ago. I wasn't the man who had just stood there, shocked, letting her walk all over me. That man was gone. This was the new me, the man who would fight for what was his, no matter the cost. The house wasn't just a house anymore. It was a symbol of everything Emily had tried to take from me. But she wasn't going to get away with it. Not this time. I was ready. The game had changed, and I wasn't going to lose. The days that followed felt like a blur, each one blending into the next. My mind never stopped racing. Every move I made, every phone call I took, every conversation I had was a step closer to the inevitable showdown. Chloe kept me updated on the legal side, telling me that everything was progressing smoothly. But I could feel the pressure building, the weight of what was coming pressing down on me. This wasn't just about reclaiming a house anymore, it was about sending a message. Making sure Emily knew that I wasn't the man she could walk all over. I had given her everything, my trust, my heart, my life, and this was how she repaid me. Well, it was time for her to see that there were consequences for betrayal. I spent the next few days preparing for what would come next. I knew the confrontation was inevitable, but I didn't want it to be a screaming match. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. No. I needed to stay calm, stay in control, and show her just how calculated I had become. My mind was constantly working, planning the next move, picturing the moment when I would finally lay everything out for her. The house was mine, and I would not let her take it from me. But I wasn't just fighting for the house, I was fighting for my dignity, my peace of mind, and my future. She thought she could destroy everything, but she didn't realize what she was up against. Chloe called me the night before the confrontation. "We've got everything in place," she said. "The buyer's aware of the situation, and we're ready to move forward. But Emily's probably not going to back down without a fight. She's going to try and make it look like you're in the wrong. You need to be ready for that." I let out a slow breath. I had expected nothing less. Emily never did anything without a plan, a strategy to make herself look like the victim. But she was wrong this time. She had no ground to stand on. I wasn't the one who had betrayed anyone. I wasn't the one who had sold our house out from under us. She was the one who had destroyed everything. And now she was going to have to face the consequences. "I'm ready," I told Chloe, my voice steady. "I know what I have to do. I'm not going to let her manipulate this situation anymore." Chloe hesitated for a moment, then spoke again, her voice firm. "Just remember, Lucas, stay calm. You're doing this for yourself, not for her. Don't let her get under your skin." "I won't," I assured her. "This is about me taking back control." The next day, everything fell into place. I had made arrangements to meet Emily at the house. She didn't know it yet, but the moment she stepped through that door, she was going to find out just how much I had been preparing. I wasn't walking into that room to beg for my life back. I wasn't going to plead with her to understand or to fix things. I was walking in to take control, to put everything I had learned into action. Emily might have thought she had won, but I was about to show her that she was wrong. I pulled up to the house, the place we had shared so many memories. My heart didn't race like it had before. It was steady now, focused. This was it. The moment of truth. I grabbed the stack of papers from the passenger seat, the evidence of everything I had done. The deed. The refinancing documents. Every email that had passed between me and the bank. I wasn't just holding a stack of papers. I was holding my victory in my hands. As I walked to the front door, I could feel the tension building inside me, but I didn't let it show. I rang the doorbell and waited. A few moments passed before the door opened, and there she was, Emily. Standing in the doorway, her smile immediately faltered when she saw me. Her eyes widened for a split second, just long enough for me to see the flicker of panic before she quickly masked it with a forced tight smile. "Lucas," she said, her voice almost too sweet. Too false. "I didn't expect you to be here so soon. I didn't expect you to be here at all." I replied coolly, stepping past her into the house. I didn't wait for her to invite me in. This was my house. I was here to take what was mine. She followed me into the living room, where I stopped and turned to face her. She was nervous now. I could see it in her eyes, the way she fidgeted with her hands, the way her words started to stumble. "Lucas, please, can we talk about this?" she said, but there was no sincerity in her voice. I had heard that tone before, the one that tried to make everything seem like my fault. Tried to make me feel like I was the one who was in the wrong, but I wasn't falling for it. Not anymore. "I don't think there's much to talk about," I said, my voice steady and firm. "You sold the house, Emily. You moved in with Noah, and you thought you could just walk away from everything without any consequences. Well, you're wrong." Her eyes widened at the mention of Noah's name, and I saw her take a step back. She hadn't expected me to know that detail. She had underestimated me again. But this wasn't just about Noah. This was about the house. And the moment I pulled out the deed from my jacket and held it up for her to see, everything changed. What is that?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "This," I said, my voice low and controlled, "is the deed to this house. The one you thought you sold. The one you thought you had the right to sell. But you didn't. Because it's in my name. You signed the paperwork without even reading it, didn't you? You didn't bother to look at the details. Well, now you see where your mistake got you." I placed the deed on the coffee table between us, and her face went pale. For the first time since I'd walked in, I saw real fear in her eyes. She glanced from the deed to me, and back again, her breath catching in her throat. "No, that's not possible," she stammered, her voice shaking now. You can't just do that." "Oh, but I can," I said, stepping closer, watching the color drain from her face. "Because this house isn't yours to sell, Emily. It never was. And now, you're going to have to deal with the consequences." Her gaze darted to the door, as if she was already planning an escape, but it was too late. The shock on her face was enough to tell me everything I needed to know. She had no idea what hit her. The arrogance, the smugness that had defined her for so long, was gone. In its place was nothing but panic. I wasn't going to give her a chance to recover. This was my moment, and I wasn't going to let it slip away. "You're not walking away from this, Emily," I said, my voice cold. "And neither is Noah. You sold something that wasn't yours. You've got a lot more to lose than you realize." She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand, silencing her. "It's over. The house is mine. And as for you, you'll have to figure out how to fix your mess on your own." As I turned to leave, I could hear her behind me, scrambling, desperate, trying to make sense of what had just happened. But it was too late. The game had changed, and I was the one in control now. She had no idea what was coming next. But I did, and I wasn't backing down. The days following the confrontation were a mixture of tension and anticipation, each one dragging out longer than the last. Emily hadn't tried to contact me since that moment, at least, not directly. But I knew better than to think she'd simply let it go. This wasn't just about the house anymore, it was about control. She had always believed she could manipulate me, bend me to her will, but she'd forgotten that I wasn't the man I used to be. I had played my cards wisely, and now I was waiting to see what she would do next. Every time my phone rang, my heart skipped a beat. I knew she was out there somewhere, plotting her next move, trying to figure out how to regain the upper hand. But I wasn't going to make it easy for her. I had already put everything in motion, and I wasn't backing down. The truth was, I felt like a predator, waiting for my prey to make its next move. But I wasn't going to rush in blindly. No, I had learned the hard way that patience was key. Emily's next move would be her biggest mistake, and I was ready to catch her when she slipped up. Chloe had been working tirelessly behind the scenes, making sure that everything was legally airtight. She was thorough, meticulous, and she had already begun notifying the authorities of the fraudulent sale. I could hear the excitement in her voice when she told me that the wheels were in motion. The buyer, who had been tricked into purchasing the house, was now fully aware of the situation. The sale was void, and they were cooperating fully with our legal team. The prospect of seeing Emily facing the legal consequences of her actions sent a wave of satisfaction through me. But as much as I wanted to see her pay, I knew this was just the beginning. It wasn't enough for me to win. I needed her to understand just how wrong she had been, just how much damage she had caused. And when that moment came, I knew she wouldn't be able to walk away from it. The real kicker, though, was what came next. Emily had made her move, yes. But in doing so, she had played right into my hands. She had made a critical error, one that would haunt her. She thought she had outsmarted me. She thought she could move on with Noah, sell our home, and leave me in the dust. But she didn't realize I had already prepared for this exact scenario. I had made sure that the house, the one thing she thought she had control over, was still mine. But she hadn't even considered what else I had been doing, while she was busy laughing behind my back. I had made sure that every legal loophole, every possible point of contention, was covered. Emily hadn't thought about the buyer's perspective. She hadn't even thought about how this would all look when the truth came out. The moment I had been waiting for finally came. Emily made the first move. And it was exactly what I had anticipated, an attempt to turn the tables. To make me look like the villain. She contacted the media, reaching out to a couple of local news outlets, trying to spin a narrative where she was the victim. She told them that she had been forced into selling the house, that I had somehow taken everything from her. Her story was full of holes, full of lies, but she didn't care. She was desperate, and desperate people made mistakes. I wasn't going to play into her hands. Instead, I turned the tables on her. Chloe had already prepared a statement for me, one that laid out the truth. I called the press and gave them a story of my own, a story about betrayal, about being blindsided by a woman I had trusted, about how Emily had secretly been seeing Noah for months, and how she had sold a house that wasn't hers to sell. The media ate it up. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about exposing Emily for who she really was, a woman who would stop at nothing to get what she wanted. Even if it meant lying, manipulating, and throwing me under the bus. I didn't just tell my side of the story. I gave them the evidence, the paperwork, the proof. Emily had no idea what hit her. The second she tried to play the victim, she was exposed. When the story hit the news, I could feel a sense of satisfaction swelling inside me. Emily had thought she could walk away, start over with Noah, and leave me scrambling to pick up the pieces of my life. But she hadn't counted on me. She hadn't counted on how far I would go to make sure the truth came out. She hadn't counted on the fact that I would fight back, that I would use every tool at my disposal to make sure she paid for what she did. And now, as the media frenzy took off, as the public started turning against her, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of victory. But it wasn't just about winning in the court of public opinion. No. The real satisfaction came when I received a call from Chloe late one afternoon. She told me that the buyer, the one who had been duped into purchasing the house, was now considering legal action against Emily for fraud. This wasn't just about her selling a house that wasn't hers. This was about her trying to profit from someone else's property. Trying to destroy me while walking away with a profit. But that was the beauty of it, she hadn't even considered the consequences. She hadn't realized that the lies she told would come back to haunt her, that her manipulations would eventually catch up with her. And when they did, there would be no escaping them. In that moment, as I listened to Chloe's voice on the other end of the phone, I realized something I had known deep down but hadn't fully acknowledged until now. This wasn't just about the house. This was about taking back my life. This was about reclaiming everything she had taken from me, the trust, the love, the sense of security, and putting it all back where it belonged. It was about making sure she knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that she hadn't won. I spent the next few weeks keeping my distance from her. She tried to reach out, calling, texting, even showing up at my door, but I didn't give her the satisfaction of answering. I had already won, and the silence was my victory. She had tried to manipulate the situation, tried to make me the bad guy, but I wasn't having it. The more she tried to make me feel guilty, the more I realized how little I cared. The woman who had once meant everything to me was gone, replaced by a stranger, a person who had no problem throwing me under the bus for the sake of her own selfish desires. But that was fine. I was done with her. The only thing left now was for Emily to face the consequences of her actions. And when that moment came, when she finally realized that she had lost everything she thought she had, I would be there, standing tall, knowing that I had taken control of my life once again. It wasn't about revenge. It was about showing her, and everyone else, that I wasn't someone to be underestimated. I was stronger than she ever gave me credit for. And I was going to make sure she knew it. It felt like everything was building toward a breaking point, and I could feel the pressure in my chest. Like a tight knot, each day that passed. Emily's actions had set this whole series of events into motion, but what I hadn't realized until now was just how much she had underestimated me. Every move she made to try to reclaim her control, to manipulate the situation, was met with an answer I had carefully prepared. I had played this game before, and now, the tide was shifting in my favor. I knew she wouldn't back down easily. Emily was never one to admit defeat, especially not to me. So when Chloe called with the news that the legal case was progressing, and the buyer was pressing charges, it hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't just winning this battle anymore, I was watching everything she had carefully built start to crumble, piece by piece. Emily had thought she could run from the mess she created, move in with Noah, and leave me to pick up the pieces. But the truth was, I had already started piecing everything together long before she made her move. The phone calls kept coming. I had expected them, but that didn't mean I was ready. Each time the phone rang, a little part of me braced for the moment when Emily would come for me again, trying to get back in my head. She wasn't the type to give up without a fight, and that fight wasn't going to be one she could win easily. She knew the press had picked up the story. She must have felt the walls closing in as her carefully crafted facade started to crack. But she still didn't know the full scope of what was happening. She didn't know that every move she made to retaliate, every phone call she made to try to manipulate the narrative, was only digging her own grave deeper. I remember the first time I saw it happen. The first sign that things were truly turning in my favor. It came out of nowhere. A story on the local news, showing Emily's face and the house she had sold, labeled with words like fraud and deception. It wasn't just the house anymore. It was her reputation, and the story was only gaining momentum. Emily had tried to play the victim, tried to spin the story in a way that would make her look like the one who had been wronged. But the truth had a way of coming out, didn't it? And once it did, it was like a floodgate had opened. People started talking. The phone call that came the day after the story aired was one I had been waiting for, even if I didn't know it at the time. It was from the buyer's lawyer, the one who had been duped into buying a house that wasn't legally his to buy. And with that call, came an offer, a settlement that would essentially wipe the slate clean for me, but would come at a heavy price for Emily. The buyer was furious. He wasn't going to let it go quietly, and neither was I. I didn't want the money or the house, I just wanted the truth out there. I wanted to make sure Emily understood that her actions had consequences. She had tried to play the victim, but now the tables were turned. She wasn't going to get away with pretending like she was the one who had been wronged. I knew Emily was watching all of this unfold. I knew she was sitting there, either in the comfort of her new life with Noah, or pacing in some dark corner of her mind, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. But the truth was, it didn't matter anymore. I had played my cards, and I had played them well. Every time Emily thought she had me cornered, I slipped away, moving one step ahead, knowing exactly what I needed to do. The legal team had already prepared the next steps, and I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. This wasn't just about the house anymore. This wasn't even about her. This was about me. I thought about her then, about what she had done to me, to us, to everything we had built together. The anger was still there, of course, but it was more of a cold, calculated rage. It wasn't a blind fury anymore. No, now I had control. And that was more powerful than any moment of revenge or any feeling of betrayal. She had stolen from me, tried to destroy everything, but in the end, it was me who had the upper hand. The irony wasn't lost on me either. Emily had believed she had won, believed she was walking away unscathed. But now she was the one who was facing the fallout. The public scrutiny, the legal battles, the shame. Every lie she had told, every sneaky move she had made, was coming back to haunt her. I couldn't help but think about how she would handle it when everything finally came crashing down on her. Would she try to spin it again? Would she play the victim card one more time? Or would she finally face the music and accept the consequences of her actions? I spent the next few days watching it all unfold, watching as the press and the buyer's legal team put the pressure on Emily. And still, I didn't hear from her. The silence was almost deafening. She hadn't reached out, not even to apologize, not even to try to make things right. She just disappeared. And maybe that was the part that hit me the hardest. All of this time, all of this pain, and she just walked away from it. She walked away from me. But here's the thing, she didn't walk away from everything. She hadn't taken the house. She hadn't taken my dignity. And she certainly hadn't taken my sense of control. No. She had given all of that away the moment she decided to sell a house that wasn't hers. To lie to me. To betray everything we had built. She thought she could just erase it all, but I was still standing. I was still here. And now, the tables had turned. Now, it was her turn to pay. What Emily didn't realize was that every lie she told, every manipulation she attempted, had a way of unraveling on its own. She had used people, used me, used Noah, to build her fantasy life, but in the end, it was all hollow. And now, everyone could see it. She had underestimated me, and now she had to face the reality of what she had done. The consequences were coming, and they were coming fast. It felt almost like a slow burn, the way everything unfolded. But I wasn't in a rush. I didn't need to be. The longer this dragged on, the more the truth came to light. And the more it unraveled for her, the more satisfying it became. She could run from the truth, she could hide, but it was always going to catch up to her. And when it did, there would be no place left for her to go. I was ready for the final confrontation, the moment when she would have no choice but to face what she had done. I didn't need her apologies. I didn't need anything from her. I had already won. It was the final stretch, and I could feel the air thickening with anticipation. Emily thought she could slip away unnoticed, that she could walk away from all of this, leaving me to pick up the pieces of a shattered life. But she had no idea just how wrong she was. The calm I had been feeling wasn't just about what had already happened. It was about what was about to come. The pieces were falling into place, and it was time for her to face the consequences of everything she had done. I had been waiting for this moment for weeks. Everything I had done, every legal maneuver, every bit of information I had carefully gathered, all the public exposure I had orchestrated, had led to this single point in time. And when I walked through that door, when I finally saw her face to face, I wasn't going to be the man she expected me to be. I wasn't going to be the broken, defeated husband she had cast aside. No, I was going to be someone else entirely. I was going to be the man who took control of his life again, who took back what was his, and made damn sure she realized the power she thought she had was nothing more than an illusion. The moment arrived quicker than I had expected. I had received word that Emily was planning to come to the house, our house, likely to try and salvage whatever she could. Or maybe to confront me, I wasn't sure. But I was ready. I knew exactly what I needed to do. The deed had been secured, the legal case was moving forward, and now, it was just a matter of timing. I had the upper hand, and I was going to make sure she knew it. I could hear her voice before I even saw her. She was standing at the foot of the stairs, probably pacing back and forth, waiting for me to give her some sign of weakness, some crack in the armor she had assumed I had. She didn't realize that I had already made my decision. I wasn't going to plead, I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to let her back into my life like some kind of redemption story. She was here to face me, and face me she would. When she saw me standing there, standing firm, she faltered for just a moment. For a split second, I saw the uncertainty in her eyes, before she quickly masked it with that familiar smugness. But it wasn't the same anymore. I wasn't fooled by it. She might have once been able to control me with a smile, or a few carefully chosen words. But not today. Not anymore. Lucas, she started, her voice trembling slightly, though she tried to cover it up with a forced cheerfulness. We need to talk. You don't understand what's really going on here. I couldn't help but smirk at her attempt to take charge. It was almost laughable how she thought she could turn the tables again. Oh, I understand perfectly, I replied, my voice low and calm. You tried to sell a house that wasn't yours. You thought you could walk away with everything. And you thought I wouldn't fight back. But here we are, and I'm still standing. Her face flushed, the confident mask slipping just enough for me to see the panic beneath. She wasn't prepared for this. She wasn't prepared for me to be calm, composed, and in control. She had expected me to crumble under the weight of her betrayal, to beg for another chance. But I wasn't the same man she had left behind. I had been broken once, but not anymore. I didn't think you would go this far, she said, her voice wavering. You've always been the nice guy, Lucas. I never thought you'd go behind my back and use the law like this. She shook her head, almost in disbelief. This is petty. You're just trying to punish me. Punish you? I repeated, the words coming out in a low chuckle. No, Emily. I'm not trying to punish you. I'm trying to make you understand that you can't just walk away from everything you've done, without facing the consequences. You thought you could manipulate me, control the situation. But now, the tables are turned, and I'm in control. She took a step back, clearly trying to regain some semblance of her old confidence. But it wasn't working. You're bluffing, she said, her voice growing defensive. There's nothing you can do. I already moved on. Noah and I are building a life together. You're just angry, and you're holding on to something that doesn't matter anymore. You're right, I said, my tone steady, unwavering. It doesn't matter. The house, the money, none of that matters anymore. What matters is that you've done something unforgivable. You've lied, you've manipulated, and you've taken things from me that you had no right to take. And now, you're going to learn that there are consequences for your actions. I saw the fear flash across her face, and for a brief moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But I quickly shut that feeling down. She had crossed a line, and now it was time for her to pay the price. She had spent months playing the part of the victim, playing the game of lies and deceit. But now, the truth was out, and there was nowhere for her to hide. Do you really think this is going to end well for you? She said, her voice shaking with anger. You're ruining my life, Lucas. You don't know what you're doing. No, Emily, I said quietly, stepping closer. I'm not ruining your life. I'm just making sure you finally see the truth. You thought you could walk away, and you thought you could leave me broken and defeated. But I'm not the man you think I am. I'm stronger than you ever gave me credit for. I could see the color draining from her face, as the reality of the situation set in. The facade she had built, the one where she was the wronged party, the victim, was crumbling before her eyes. She had underestimated me at every turn, thinking that I was too naive to fight back. But now she knew. I wasn't the man she had left behind. I was something different. I had learned, I had grown, and I had taken back control. The silence that hung between us was thick, like the calm before a storm. She opened her mouth to say something, but I held up a hand, silencing her. I wasn't going to listen to her excuses anymore. I wasn't going to give her a chance to manipulate the situation further. It was over. You're done here, Emily, I said, my voice firm, final. The house is mine. The truth is out, and you can't hide from it anymore. I turned and walked out of the room, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. The fight was over. The battle had been won. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I had reclaimed my life, my peace, and my dignity. And nothing was going to take that away from me. I could feel the air crackling with tension as I stood there, watching her crumble before me. Emily had always been the one to hold the power in our relationship, the one to make all the decisions, the one who always seemed to have the upper hand. But not anymore. That moment, standing in the house she thought she was walking away from, was a turning point. She had tried to take everything from me, my trust, my peace of mind, my life, but now, I could see it in her eyes, the realization that she had miscalculated. She had underestimated me. And now, she was going to pay for it. I had kept my emotions in check for so long, but now, seeing her panic, seeing her facade begin to crack, something inside me shifted. I wasn't the man I used to be, the one who was broken by betrayal, who let others control his fate. No, that man was long gone. The man standing in front of Emily now was stronger, more calculated, and completely in control. Every decision I had made, every move I had planned, had led to this exact moment. And I wasn't going to back down now. Her voice trembled as she tried to regain control, but the desperation was unmistakable. You can't do this, Lucas. You can't take everything from me. Her words were frantic, filled with the kind of panic that only came from someone who knew they had lost, someone who had been caught in a lie they could no longer hide from. But I wasn't going to show her any mercy. Not after everything she had done to me. I had spent too long playing her game, pretending to be the victim, pretending to be weak. But now, I was the one in control, and she had to face the consequences of her actions. You're right, Emily, I said calmly, my voice steady. I'm not just taking everything from you. You've already taken enough from me. You've destroyed what we had, you've lied, you've manipulated. Now, it's time for you to face the truth. Her face contorted with anger as she took a step forward, but I stood my ground. She tried to intimidate me, to remind me of the power she had once held over me. But it wasn't going to work anymore. I could see the doubt creeping in her eyes, as she tried to hold on to the last threads of control. She wasn't the person I had once loved. She wasn't the woman who could make me believe in her lies. She was just a woman, exposed for who she truly was, a manipulator, a liar, and someone who would stop at nothing to get what she wanted. I didn't ask for this, she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. You made me do this. You made me do everything. You're the reason we're here. I raised an eyebrow, not buying her attempt to shift the blame. No, Emily, you did this. You made the choice to sell a house that wasn't yours to sell. You decided to throw away everything we built. And now, you're trying to paint yourself as the victim? It's over. She recoiled as if the words had stung, and for the first time since I had walked in, I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. It wasn't the fear of me, but the fear of losing everything she had once thought she was entitled to. She thought she could take the house, the life we had, and walk away without any consequences. But she hadn't counted on me. I didn't want any of this, she muttered, almost to herself. I never wanted this to happen. I stepped closer, my presence overwhelming. Then why did you do it, Emily? Why did you betray me? Why did you think you could get away with all of this? The truth is, you never thought I would fight back. You thought I'd just sit here and let you destroy everything. But you were wrong. She stepped back, her face pale, her hands trembling at her sides. She was unraveling, and I could feel it. The once confident woman who had ruled my life with manipulation was now crumbling under the weight of her own lies. It was almost poetic, the way the truth had slowly taken her down, piece by piece. I was just trying to move on, she said, almost pleading now. I wanted to forget everything, Lucas. I wanted to be happy. I wanted a fresh start. I felt a cold laugh rise in my chest. A fresh start. By selling our home and moving in with your lover. That's your idea of a fresh start? You never cared about me, Emily. You never cared about what we built. All you cared about was getting what you wanted, no matter who you had to hurt to get it. Her eyes narrowed, the last remnants of her bravado slipping away. You don't understand, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You never understood me. I shook my head slowly. No, Emily. I understood you better than you ever realized. I understood that you'd use anyone, even me, to get ahead. I understood that you'd stop at nothing to keep control. But now, that control is slipping through your fingers. The silence between us was deafening. I could see her mind racing, the realization sinking in that her carefully constructed world was falling apart. She thought she could just walk away, that everything would go back to normal, but I wasn't going to let that happen. She had done this to herself. She had made her bed, and now it was time for her to lie in it. For a moment, she just stood there, eyes wide with disbelief. She couldn't believe what was happening. She couldn't believe how badly she had misjudged me. And that, more than anything, was the sweet taste of victory. You're not going to get away with this, she said, her voice low, a thread of panic creeping in. I'll fight you, Lucas. I'll fight until the end. I stepped back, letting out a slow breath, not taking my eyes off her. You already lost, Emily. The fight ended the moment you thought you could destroy everything, without any consequences. Now, it's over. Her face twisted in frustration, but there was nothing she could do now. The game was over. She had played her hand, and she had lost. I'm done, I said, my voice firm. You've done enough damage. Now, you can live with the consequences. I turned to leave, my heart pounding, but there was a strange sense of peace in the finality of it all. Emily might have thought she could destroy me, that she could walk away without any repercussions. But now, as I left her standing there, defeated and broken, I knew that I had taken control of my life again. And nothing was going to take that away from me. The days after I walked away from Emily were some of the most surreal of my life. I had thought that once everything was laid out, once the truth had been exposed, I'd feel some kind of relief, some kind of closure. But the truth, it turns out, doesn't always come with a neat bow tied around it. There was no triumphant moment where I could sit back and breathe easy. No, what I had gone through, what I had fought for, was never about the house or the money. It was about something deeper. Something that only truly hit me after the dust had settled. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was free. I wasn't just free of Emily's manipulations, her lies, and the constant, suffocating weight of our broken marriage. I was free from myself, free from the person I had been, when I let her control my every move. Free from the man who had believed that loving her was enough to make me weak. I had fought for myself. And for the first time in years, I finally felt like I had won. But winning wasn't as satisfying as I had imagined. There was a hollowness in it. Something I couldn't shake. Something that lingered in the corners of my mind. The first few weeks after everything came to light were filled with confusion. It wasn't about Emily anymore, at least, not directly. It was about rebuilding, about rediscovering who I was, what I had become after all of this. Chloe, my lawyer and my old friend, checked in frequently. She was busy with the final paperwork, making sure the buyer's lawsuit against Emily was solid, keeping the legal pressure on. But for me, that part of the story was over. What mattered now was what I was going to do with the second chance I had been given. The house. The house we had built together. When I first moved back in after Emily left, I couldn't even look at it without feeling like it was a part of her. A part of the life she had stolen. But something changed in me over time. Slowly, I began to reclaim it. Not just as a building, but as a symbol of everything I had fought for. Every corner I redid, every picture I hung, every space I cleared, it felt like a victory. It felt like I was peeling away the layers of who I had been, and making room for who I was going to become. I thought I would feel triumphant when Emily finally had to face the consequences of her actions, when the media had exposed her, when the legal battles caught up to her. But watching her fall apart didn't give me the satisfaction I had expected. It didn't bring me peace. It was almost as if I had been expecting something that could never come, revenge, that would heal the wounds. A final moment where everything would be set right. But there was no magic moment. No clean slate. It was all messy. Life was messy. I tried to keep my mind off her. I stayed busy, focusing on work, focusing on getting my life back on track. But sometimes, when I least expected it, the thoughts of her would creep in. Not in a way that hurt, but in a way that felt unfinished. And that unsettled me. The problem wasn't the house, or the money, it was the emotional scars I had buried deep inside. The things I hadn't dealt with. I realized that Emily wasn't the only one who had caused damage. I had allowed it. I had allowed her to take everything I had worked for. My dignity, my sense of self-worth. I had given her all of that power. And now, I had to learn how to take it back. I started reaching out to old friends. People I had shut out during our marriage. People I had distanced myself from because Emily didn't like them, or because I had become too consumed with her and everything that had to do with her. Slowly, I rebuilt my social circle, and with each connection I restored, I felt more like the person I had been before. But this time, I was stronger. This time, I wasn't going to let anyone control me again. The real breakthrough came one evening, a few months after Emily left. I had been spending a lot of time alone, thinking through everything that had happened, working through the emotions that had built up inside me. I knew I had to let go of the anger, let go of the bitterness, before it consumed me. It wasn't easy. There were days when I wanted to pick up the phone, call her, and tell her how much she had hurt me. But I knew that wouldn't do anything. It would only drag me back into the darkness. One night, I sat on the couch in the living room, looking out the window at the city lights. The house, my house, was finally mine again. The walls no longer felt like they were closing in. I had transformed the space into something that reflected who I was now. It felt like a fresh start. A real one. I realized that Emily hadn't taken everything from me. She hadn't taken my ability to heal, my ability to grow. In fact, her departure had forced me to confront parts of myself I had been ignoring for years. I had grown, I had learned. And for the first time, I felt like I was living for me, not for her. Not for anyone else. But I still hadn't fully dealt with everything. There was one last piece of the puzzle I needed to put in place, letting go of the past. It wasn't just about Emily anymore. It was about me forgiving myself for the things I had allowed to happen. For the person I had become when I let her run my life. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but it was the last step. And the moment I realized that, a weight lifted off my shoulders. The phone rang one night, and it was Chloe. I had expected the call, but not with the news she delivered. Emily had finally signed the divorce papers. The paperwork was done, the house was officially mine, and the legal battle was over. I wasn't sure how to feel. I had fought so hard for this moment, but now that it was here, I felt relief. It was finally over. I didn't need her anymore. I didn't need to prove anything. "Lucas, you're free," Chloe said, her voice soft, but filled with a quiet pride. "It's done. You've done it." I sat there in silence for a long time, letting her words sink in. I wasn't happy, and I wasn't sad. I was just at peace. I realized then that everything had happened the way it was supposed to. I had to go through all of it, the pain, the betrayal, the anger, in order to get to this moment. I had to lose everything in order to find myself. And now, standing in the life I had rebuilt, I could finally breathe. I could finally live without the weight of her, without the burden of the past, holding me down. And when I thought about what came next, I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel anger. I felt hope. I felt like I was on the verge of something new. Something better. Something that was all mine. The future was wide open, and for the first time, I was ready to walk into it on my own terms. Emily had taken her shot, and she had lost. But in the end, I had come out on top. I had reclaimed my life, my freedom, and my peace of mind, and nothing was ever going to take that away from me again. Wow. That ending was not what anyone saw coming. What a ride, right? Did he get the justice he deserved, or did Emily get away with it? Now that everything's out in the open, what happens next? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know if you were shocked by the final twist, because I sure was. The lesson here is clear: never let anyone, no matter how close they are, control your life or take away your sense of self. Stand firm in your truth, no matter how difficult the battle. In America, where independence and personal freedom are core values, it's crucial to protect your boundaries and fight for what's rightfully yours. Betrayal and manipulation can take everything from you, but it's up to you to take back control. The real victory comes not from revenge, but from reclaiming your peace and self-worth. Never let anyone steal that from you.